I am one of the 18 Canadian parliamentarians who were targeted by APT 31, which is a hacking group out of the People's Republic of China working underneath the Ministry of State Security. The role of APT 31 is there are transnational repression, economic espionage, and foreign interference operations on behalf of the People's Republic of China. And that communist regime, of course, has been interfering in our operations here in Canada, our elections. They've been trying to quash members of Parliament who are out there speaking out against the communist regime and the way that they have been violating human rights and interfering in geopolitics around the world. Now, the reason that we know that us as Canadian parliamentarians were targeted is because the U.S. Department of Justice unsealed an indictment from the FBI on these 7 individuals from APT 31 on March the 25th of this year. And they charged 7 PRC nationals for espionage and foreign interference. Now, the U.S. Justice Department put sanctions on these individuals. The U.S. State Department is also offering rewards for more information about them. And because that indictment became public, and when you read through the indictment and some of the activities of APT 31, you realize that they had conducted over 10,000 different cyber hacks around the world, targeting predominantly legislators. And they specify in there that the Inter-Parliamentary Alliance on China, IPAC, was targeted in 2021. I am a member of IPAC, and all 18 members here in Canada that were targeted are also members of IPAC. And so IPAC was quite shocked to see that this had happened to when they realized this in April, and they quickly notified all their members in Europe, in Canada, the United States, and in Australia. But of course the Americans already knew about it. The FBI had alerted those their congressmen and senators, but they were very concerned about this. So let's just go through the timeline here. APT 31 targets myself and my colleagues, the 18 of us, by doing a phishing cyber hack into our emails. The FBI discovered this in 2021, 2022, and they let U.S. legislators know, and then followed the proper 5I protocol and let CSE here in Canada know. CSE, then contacted House of Commons Services and through their IT branch, and then nothing happened. Crickets. None of us, as Canadian parliamentarians, were notified by CSE, by the Government of Canada, or by the House of Commons Protective Services. It was all mute. IPAC finds out in 2024 that their membership around the world, including 18 members here in Canada, were targeted 2 years after the hacking event happened, 2 years after CSE and the House of Commons was notified that it happened, and yet nobody thought it important enough to contact us as parliamentarians that our emails and our online services were potentially compromised. You got to also think that at that time, Mr. Speaker, in 2019, in 2021, we already are witnessing foreign interference taking place in our federal elections, that the PRC was using operatives to intimidate members of Parliament and their families, as we saw with the member from Wellington Halton Hills, with his family back in Hong Kong, that they were trying to intimidate him and all the people here in Canada. We know that with their police stations, the PRC police stations that were set up across this country, that they were interfering and intimidating Chinese nationals who call Canada home. We know that they were using foreign students to flood nomination meetings. And all that time, this Liberal government turned a blind eye. They have no problem with the PRC interfering in our election processes when it undermines people like the Conservative member from Wellington Halton Hills, or Kenny Chu, our former Conservative member of Parliament from Vancouver, who lost his riding. As long as the Liberals thought they were benefiting. They're prepared not to do anything about it. But we know that through Justice Hogue and her Commission on Foreign Interference here, that there is sound evidence to show that foreign interference is undermining our democratic institutions. Now, I've always assumed that, I've been very active, of course, on standing up for Ukraine and holding Russian oligarchs and corrupt foreign officials around the world to account. I've been trolled all the time on social media by the Russian trolls, and I was even asked to appear as a witness at the Hogue Commission because of the ongoing attacks that happen on my social media platforms. Now, I'm also a member of Hong Kong Watch. I'm a patron of Hong Kong Watch Canada, and again, standing up for democracy and civil liberties in Hong Kong because of the communist regime's activities there and quashing any individual rights and liberties, especially free and fair elections in Hong Kong. And I am the Shadow Minister of National Defense and for the official opposition. So you think about my email potentially getting hacked by operatives for the People's Liberation Army in China. You would think that somebody would call and let me know that I'm getting targeted. In 2021, 2022, somebody should have made that call. I'm also the vice chair of the Standing Committee on National Defense. We often deal with information on national security, on our Canadian Armed Forces, on our operations in Europe under NATO. And I'm always advocating for supplying more weapons for Ukraine. And you think that that would be enough of a red flag to see the government of Canada, seeing this Liberal government actually contact us and say that we need to take precautionary measures to protect the information that I have, that I'm sharing amongst my colleagues, including other members in the Standing Committee of National Defense. But no, I was never notified by CSE. I was never notified by Parliamentary Protective Services. I wasn't notified by CSIS or the RCMP. And nobody from the Government of Canada has ever reached out to me to inform me that I was at risk, that my colleagues were at risk, and that we potentially were getting undermined. But surprisingly, I'm going to get a briefing this week, tomorrow actually, from the FBI. The FBI is actually going to inform us as parliamentarians, those of us that were targeted by APT 31, to get the information now. You would think that the RCMP, CSIS, or CSE would be stepping up, or at the very least somebody from the Liberal government, but no, it's mute. And that comes down to that we have a Liberal government that just hasn't taken foreign interference seriously. We have a Prime Minister who has never made national security a priority. And national security should always be a priority for the Prime Minister. And that's something that is an afterthought for this Prime Minister. He's always downplayed the seriousness of the threats from Beijing, from Moscow, from Tehran, and has never stood up for us as parliamentarians to protect our democratic institutions. He's never stood up to say that we're going to protect the diaspora communities, whether it's Chinese, whether it's Ukrainian, whether it's the Persian community here that have run away from oppression, from those dictatorships and totalitarian regimes. I can tell you this, that our leader of the official opposition, the leader of Canada Conservatives, will always defend our freedoms, our democracy, our national security, and will always put Canada first. We'll always stand up for the democratic rights and the privileges of those of us that serve in this elected chamber, in this hallowed chamber. And I know that things will be better under a Prime Minister that represents the Conservative Party of Canada. Thank you.
Question et commentaire. The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
So thank you, Mr. Speaker. Again, what I would like to be able to do is to express that the government's over the last number of years has taken international foreign interference very seriously, and that's why we've taken a number of measures to deal with it. At some point this will be going to Procedures and House Affairs Committee. We would hope that it would be a productive process, Mr. Speaker, that will come up with some tangible thoughts and ideas. After all, it's not just Canada This is happening around the world, and I think that Canada can play a leading position on dealing with this very important issue.
The honourable member from Falkirk, Interlake, Eastman.
Well, Mr. Speaker, we know that the member from Winnipeg North has always been an apologist for this Prime Minister and for the failures of this Liberal government. And they have never taken our national security seriously. They tried to cover up the foreign interference that happened in the 2019 and 2021 elections. We know that the special rapporteur that was appointed, that he was just going to wax over all the foreign interference. And the Hogue Commission, after much pressure from the Conservatives, were able to finally get the answers that we deserve in that first report that came out last week, and we expect that there's going to be better recommendations on the road. That's coming because of our pressure. It has nothing to do with that Liberal government.